tell about how the procedure of investigation of this aviation event should have been happening. Who has the right to conduct such an investigation? What are the powers of different countries which are involved into the process, and so on? This is the issue which is clearly regulated. For that, there is a Chicago Convention of 1944, an International Aviation Article 26 of which provides powers to the state on the territory of which the aviation event took place. Certain circles disseminate information that this investigation should have been conducted by the International Aviation Committee, which is located in Moscow. But the powers of that organization are based on delegating powers from some state. The only subject of powers on investigating the aviation accident is one state, not several states, not international organization, but the state on the territory of which the international incident took place. In this case, Ukraine. In Russian Federation, the International Interstate Committee is considered to be the body of Russia, which, if delegated, conducts investigation. But as to Ukraine, according to the Minsk Convention of 1991, the International Aviation Committee has the common sphere in the field of investigation, but that is possible only to the extent allowed by the domestic legislation of the states that signed that convention. In Ukraine, there is a special body which is called the National Bureau on Investigating Aviation Accidents and Incidents, which has to appoint the investigation, the chief investigator, and according to Annex 13 to International Convention on International Investigation, should conduct investigation. As to persons that should be included into this commission, talking about the members of the National Bureau, they have to be the citizens of Ukraine, but not a single act of Ukrainian or international law puts any limitations as to the citizenship of those people who are invited to the commission. This could be the representatives of other countries invited to this commission. Besides, there is the so-called, in the procedure, there is the so-called Institute of Authorized Persons. The authorized persons to inspect the place of the accident, to participate in all the actions of the commission, to learn the final report, and to provide some objectives. Such persons could be provided by the states who were operating the aircraft. Malaysia in our case, the state designer and producer of the aircraft, in this case the United States, any state whose citizens were killed or wounded, whose citizens were aboard of the aircraft. We know that there were the citizens of the Netherlands, Malaysia, the United Kingdom, the United States, France. Unfortunately, many people, too many people. That is basically about the procedure of investigation. So please keep in mind that the only country that is authorized to conduct investigation is Ukraine in this case. If you have any questions as to what is known about this accident or any procedures related to it, please ask questions. Union, my question is, the head of the SBU has demonstrated the video and audio files of the intercepted conversation. He says that this is the evidence of the guilt of Russian Federation and terrorists. If it happens so that this evidence, the possible remnants of the aircraft, possible remnants of the missile, this missile launcher are taken to Russia, from the point of view of international law, will there be enough video proof, interrogation of possible terrorists and prisoners to restore the whole picture of the aircraft, or do they need the material proof like the remnants and the weapons? The investigation that I was talking about is conducted separately from the investigation in criminal cases, in administrative cases. The only objective of that is to establish the reason of the crash, to avoid such situations in the future, and no one can interfere into this process. In all the manuals on conducting investigation, it says that the main thing is the place of the incident or accident, which is to be secured as much as possible in any case, and the access there could have, in the beginning at least, only the members of the commission, and the chief investigator, head of the commission, is the main authorized person. But if what you are saying happens, then we need to look at the objective evidence, what is not subject to the human factor. People could see different things and could perceive it differently. Like, I believe many people, without knowing how the aircraft could be downed by the missile, may believe that any bright spot in the sky is the evidence. But if all this material evidence disappear, then we need to look at all the objective information that is available, photo, video, if they could be connected to location, and based on that indicate what was the height, what were the coordinates, and so on. Secondly, in this area there were different radio location stations operating, and probably there's something on some of them. This missile, if we are talking about if we are talking about missile, this missile is quite big. It's almost 6 meters long, and there should have been traces of it left. How will it really be depends on how the radio location stations operated. Also, any zones of combat are monitored very attentively from satellites. If it's not the trajectory of the flight of the missile, but at least the location, the moment of launch will be fixed. But nevertheless, for the full picture, it would be desirable to have the remnants of the aircraft, so that it is obvious how the violation of the system's operation took place, what happened to the body of the aircraft. Of course, the recorded conversations aboard could have could be also considered the evidence, and also the order of how the remnants were falling. Based on that, it is also possible indirectly to find out from which direction the aircraft was hit, and also the medical expertise. Unfortunately, hundreds of people died.
Could you be more precise about the reconstruction of a launch of a missile? There should be, anyway, for such a missile, which is, as you said, a big one, some evidence is left on radars, recorded by radars, or even by satellite.
I beg your pardon, that's what I just said.
So
yes.
Are these documents available already?
So I don't have this information available at the moment, but I believe there should be quite a thorough search for all the data available on all the radars, and we hope very much that our partners from all over the world will provide us with, Ukraine by us, will provide us with relevant satellite information.
Yeah, and what about radars, Ukrainian radars? Have the Ukrainian raiders this?
So you know quite well that the situation, for example, in Donetsk airport is not quite stable. I don't know whether radar information was available there. Anyway, I believe that air traffic control from Dnipropetrovsk, which is the center of this flight information region, should have something at the point. Let's see. We should know. Actually, it's too early to answer precisely, because we should know at least what was the scale of the radar which was operative at the moment and which had this accident in range.
Just the last question, sorry.
Yeah.
But the data recorders, the flight data recorders, are probably going to Moscow, according to some sources. Is it possible to anyway do an investigation in such a case without the flight data recorders, or do you think that they are really 100% relevant to reach a conclusion?
Well, flight data recorders are crucial indeed. However, they mostly point to the internal situation on board and how the systems were functioning. What was the external effect on the flight could be learned only from the exterior of the plane, and from the investigation of the hull. So, if for any reason, which is absolutely illegal, and which is an act of raidership, I believe, these flight data recorders will be given to into custody of any other party than designated by the Ukrainian Investigation Commission. Okay, I believe that the commission, which should be appointed, should take every objective data available, including radar data and satellite data and so on, which could give some clues to the story. But anyway, I believe that the exterior of the plane is the most crucial point here, with the signs of impact.
Дякую. Ще одне запитання. Можна, Ірина Винокурова, телеканал НТН.
Tell me, please, there's a lot of rumors and speculations. Why that plane was flying over ATO area? Why the airspace was not closed? Who should approve a decision that all that area is dangerous to fly? And who decides how to direct those transit planes? First point, the issue of route, it's up to the pilots, the captain of a plane. Always there is a flying plan and some like points, and that plan is provided at least 2 hours before the flight. So it is planned in a way when it includes some restrictions, flying restrictions. I was trying to get notice for flights about and restrictions in that region. And the restriction is as high as 7,000 meters. That's a restriction. Why there was such a restriction? It's an open question. I cannot answer it, unfortunately. The department responsible for flights there is a country which is responsible, and Dnipropetrovsk. We have that center in Dnipropetrovsk, and it's in Ukraine. From international law, a curfew? Should it be introduced just to close a space, even if it's higher than 10,000 meters? No. That is not compulsory, because in general this can stop flights just because of bad weather conditions. Anything which threatens normal functioning of for flights. Any other question? I would like to clarify. Russia actively in internet, and the government, they would like to accuse Ukraine for that, to make Ukraine responsible. Like, it's on your territory, you're responsible for that. From what you told us about that the Dnipropetrovsk flying center is provided information. So there will be probably a lot of court proceedings after this. How strong is Russian position legally? Because you have to prove a lot of things here. That's a funny position. On such a day, it's just a funny position. First of all international laws say the only reason to investigate, it's not to find someone responsible, but to prevent such cases in the future. And before the investigation of this event is over, to speak about anything else, which would to find someone responsible, is incorrect, because we don't know the reason. If we don't know the reason, a true reason, we cannot speak about responsibility of anyone, because we don't have causal and causes and effects here. It's also important that and we proved that in Ukraine and in Greece once, when there was an accident in a crash in Thessaloniki, and in other jurisdictions, any conclusions of investigation commission are taken into consideration, and information, evidence it takes, it's considered. But all of that should be a subject of court checks when a process begins, because what is mentioned in the documents of commission not always meets the situation on the ground. So, and such cases, there were such cases when local courts, and when they, like in Saloniki, a crash in Saloniki, the local courts are gave different reasons than the investigation commission. So the commission investigation, they must find reasons. So they must find evidence. And it's like a source, it's a source of evidence, but it's not the last rule. What happens during court proceedings, I cannot tell you. It's not timely to ask that question. Of course, there will be court proceedings. It happens when many people die. And we have one more question here. If a black box or HAL gets of the plane gets into Russia, the Ukrainian Investigation Commission does it have the right to demand it back? And what happens? Could you take it back from Russia if they send it to Russia? You understand quite well. If those objects get into Russia, Russia will say, this investigation should be done by an international committee. Quite recently, they abused the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine. What can you discuss with Russia? So to demand anything from Russia, you need to have like enforcement. We could authorize Russian court to do that. But can you imagine what happens after that? So any request is not compulsory. It will be complied with if the country doesn't want to do that. Only if all international community with its pressure or force as some individuals who believe that they are allowed to do anything they want. If they want them to stick to the procedure and to allow to have an objective, full-fledged investigation, because as we know how MAC, how they investigate. In 25 days, they could run a very complicated investigation. So we have a negative experience of that organization. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you.